Okay, we need to talk about GPT-5, beyond the hype, both the good and the bad stuff. Within the presentation, there were more chart crimes than I have seen anywhere before this. Somehow, 30 and 69 are exactly the same height, and 52 is bigger than 69. Here is what it's supposed to look like. If you put Opus 4.1 next to it, it doesn't seem that impressive anymore. Now, don't get me wrong, the model itself is pretty impressive when it comes to coding. However, there was more. 50 is lower than 47. Maybe they should have used GPT-5 to figure this out. It could be that for each one of these plots, they were using different scales, but still, 50 and 47 doesn't make any sense. But it doesn't stop there. Then we have this plot. This was measuring the agentic coding capabilities. Turns out that they had the labeling wrong, because this is what it's supposed to look like. But wait, in the morning, if you looked at the official blog post on Frontier Math, somehow GPT Nano was doing much better compared to GPT-5 on high settings. But at the recording of this video, they have fixed it. So now it's 9.6 instead of 72.8. But these are all the things that they showed. You want to look at the things that they didn't show, which are on GPT-5 system card. But before that, they said that everybody's going to have access to GPT-5 for free, but the rate limits were never really explicitly mentioned what exactly they are. So here are the rate limits. For Plus users, you get 80 messages every 3 hours. If you explicitly use the GPT-5 thinking, then you are getting 200 messages per week, which is the same rate limits as O3. But right now, you don't have the option of selecting any other model. For free tier, you get only 10 messages every 5 hours. Now, Pro and Team get unlimited access, but we don't know what the definition of unlimited is. Now, if you go to ChatGPT, as a paid user, you get only 2 options. Either it's GPT-5 or GPT-5 Thinking. This is supposed to have a smart router, which will automatically select a model based on the complexity of the question. However, that router is currently broken, and most of the paid queries are somehow being routed to the smaller GPT-5 mini or nano model. And I feel like a lot of people are going to miss O3, O4 mini pretty soon, because right now you don't really have any control on model selection, apart from those 2 choices. Before looking at some interesting things on the system card, let's talk about one benchmark that they usually highlight but didn't even bring it up, neither in their blog post nor in their release video, and that's ArcAGI. Now, don't get me wrong, it does state-of-the-art performance for any OpenAI model. In fact, it's just lower than Grok 4. But the most impressive point is the cost at which it's able to achieve this performance, which is substantially lower than anything that we have seen so far. On ArcAGI 2, it's much lower compared to state-of-the-art, which is Grok 4, but still, I think it's a huge improvement on other models. So that brings me to some benchmarks that they did cover on their system card, where it paints a very different picture than what they were showing on SuiBench. And these are all internal OpenAI benchmarks. Now keep in mind, benchmarks do not represent the true capabilities of the model, but they still give you an indication. The first one is OpenAI pull requests benchmark. In here, the performance is very similar to OpenAI O3 when you disable browsing. The next one is OpenAI Proof. This is an internal benchmark by OpenAI. This represents internal research and engineering bottlenecks that cause at least a single day delay. So it's a real world representation of the type of tasks that you want these models to perform. But in here, again, it's very similar to O3. But for some reason, this green box has a higher height than the blue one, even though they're exactly the same 2%. So you could also add this to the list of chart crimes. Now, the next one is MLE Bench, which is an agentic benchmark that measures the model capability or the agent's capability to solve Kaggle computation problems. Again, the improvement is marginal. Same is the case for Sui Lancer, and this evaluates performance on real-world, economically valuable full-stack engineering tasks, which include feature development, front-end design, performance improvement, and so on. Again, the improvement that you see are marginal compared to O3 that are probably within the margin of error. In fact, ChatGPT agent does much better. And then there is paper bench. So can a model replicate the results of a research paper? Again, you don't really see much improvement. But there are some in which you actually see degradation. So for example, capture the map, you have much lower performance compared to O3. And you will also notice that they switch colors here. So far on every benchmark, GPT-5 thinking was represented with a green color. And then there is another very interesting one. So this is Health Bench, in which somehow GPT-5 thinking mini does better compared to GPT-5 thinking. One last thing, this was supposed to simplify model selection, but they have actually listed how to think about this new GPT-5 series compared to the previous models. And I think it makes it a lot more confusing if you're using them through the API rather than the existing model structures. Now, there are some really good things about this model, which we're going to talk about. But before that, one more thing. I don't think most users will see this as a big jump that was GPT-3 going to GPT-4 or even GPT 3.5. This seems like an incremental improvement for most users, because I think for you to feel the real power of GPT-5, you will need to use it on very complex tasks, very similar to what Gemini 2.5 DeepThink is supposed to do. So that being said, GPT-5 thinking is a powerful model, especially when it comes to agentic coding capabilities. I recently released a video on that. Link is going to be in the video description if you want to look at its coding capabilities. Now, this is the model that is probably creating the new Pareto frontier for cost to performance ratio. So this plot was shared by Sean. This is plot of model pricing versus LM-SIS ELO score. And at this point, GPT-5 is on the frontier. It has left the Gemini series from Google behind. And the second thing is this unified router, which can automatically select the models based on your needs. Now, personally, I am not convinced yet. We'll have to actually see whether it works or not. And I personally want to have a lot more control on the model selection rather than trying to prompt the model to enable a deeper thinking. But that brings us to price to performance ratio. Now, GPT-5 is the best option available at the moment. I don't think anything even come closer right now. Sean puts it, a lot of developers unimpressed with the GPT-5 numbers are missing the bigger picture. OpenAI now completely dominates the intelligence Pareto frontier, and for the first time, they have officially confirmed a continuous trained real-time router model and provided some details on signals. The main selling point for anybody who is using the API is going to be price. I don't know how good of a coder is this going to be compared to the cloud models. It definitely feels better at single shotting stuff, but real software development is not about a single shot application development. And most of the demos you probably have seen on YouTube or even on Twitter are people trying to build single shot stuff. So keep that in mind. But I would say this definitely generates much better looking UIs or front ends compared to other models. But it has a relatively smaller context window compared to the Gemini 1 million context window. So it's a 400,000 with 128,000 max output tokens. And it's multimodal in nature when it comes to input, but the output is only text at the moment. In terms of pricing, it's $1.25 input, output is $10. But if you do cash processing, it's even lower. And I think this is where it's going to be extremely hard for any other providers to beat GPT-5. At the end of the day, developers are going to care about how much a model costs. Here's a very helpful price comparison from Simon Wilson. You can see that this model is very similar to Gemini 2.5 Pro if you're using less than 200,000 tokens. And if you go to the mini or nano version, this is even cheaper. I think it probably offers better performance compared to something like Flash if you're making this comparison. And for the most tasks, you don't need the biggest GPT-5 or Gemini 2.5 Pro. These smaller models are going to be more than enough, given how fast this new GPT-5 family is. Now, OpenAI recently released their open source models. They are being served in 4-bit floating point precision. They are probably serving these GPT-5 models in 4-bit precision as well to reduce cost. I think unifying everything into a single model or a single system that can select different models based on the task at hand also saves a lot of serving and inference money and GPU costs to OpenAI. That being said, I think most people probably thought it's a very underwhelming release for a version jump from 4 to 5. Sam tweeted this: GPT-5 is the smartest model we have ever done, but the main thing we pushed for is the real world utility and mass accessibility / affordability. We can release much smarter models, and we will, but this is something a billion plus user will benefit from. Most of the world has only used models like GPT-4 Pro. And this probably sums it up nicely. They probably have better models, but they are maybe not able to host it at a reasonable price at this point. I'm personally glad that they did not call this AGI, otherwise all the AGI folks would have been very disappointed. All jokes aside, I still think this is an impressive coding model from OpenAI. I'm not sure whether we can call it that, whether it's on par with the Claude series or not. We'll have to do a lot more testing, but if you want to see my coding video, it's going to be in the video description. Before I wrap this up, I want to test this on my own small AGI test. This is going to be the only test we do in this video. And I want to see how does this model perform. So this is a classic farmer problem that you probably have seen. The only difference is that we want the model to take the goat to the other side of the river, not everything. So we're going to set this, and right away it gets it wrong. Okay, so try to take everything to the other side. Now let's try it on deep thinking. So for this, I am going to waste one of my 200 requests that I can send. Let's see what it does. All right, okay. Can I think actually, oh, it disappeared. I thought we could see the details. Okay, so I can't actually see the details here anymore. But again, it says here's a step-by-step solution. So take the goat across, then go back alone, get the wolf, right? This is not what we wanted to do. But like any other model that I have tested, it doesn't stop at just taking the goat to the other side and that's it. But it did draw me a little diagram, which is pretty neat. Anyways, do let me know what your experience with this model is. I'm very interested in learning more about from the community. What do you think? It's better than Opus and the Cloud series? It's on par with it, or it's underwhelming for you? Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.